we had Harry and a couple of the guys, but I'm going to reintroduce everyone for anyone that wasn't there. I think that the nice thing with this, because normally when people come and meet us or you're meeting me, we get to talk, we don't get to talk about wine in particular, and it's quite nice to have our wine guiding team here. So I'm going to start with Josh, because I think he's the reason quite a few people came, because I showed a picture of him last week. Josh, where are you? Give us a wave. So this is what Josh looks like in the summer. So he's let me just, I'll leave that up there while I'm talking, because it's much more. Oh. So Josh is he's our surfing sommelier. So he trained as a lawyer, despite the look. Josh, could you give us a hair flick just to get us in the mode? Yeah. And so he trained as a lawyer, and it's fitting that we're talking about Constantia tonight, because Josh grew up in Constantia, and I'm sure he'll tell us a bit more about it. But he headed 2 wine rooms, wine tasting rooms, in Constantia for over 5 years, and then gave that up for a life of wine adventuring. Matt here. I don't know, Matt, if you could explain the picture behind you first, because I thought that was quite, just so people don't think you're completely weird.
Yeah, this is you can't see the full one, but this is just anecdotal. Let me get this is a full-bodied, well-balanced wine. You know what I'm saying, guys?
So Matt's been with us right from the start. He along with Harry does the wine training with the other guides. And when he came in originally, just popped into our office for to see if we had any office jobs and what we're doing. And he gave us a sort of a rundown of his CV, and he's been Ellerman House, Pindazuka, Mayfair in London, and in all of those, very much involved with their wine. And I'm most envious of him because he's part of Harry's Southern Peninsula Wine Guild, which I haven't had the nod for yet, so I've got to do a bit more brushing up. So that's Matt. Justin, give us a wave, Justin.
Hello.
So Justin was it Montrochal that you used to do the wine list for?
Grand Roche.
Grand Roche. That had at the time it was rated as the top restaurant in South Africa. And Justin was in charge of the wine list there, plus a number of other places, but then became a sort of wine trafficker, and I spent 12 years as an exporter, and then an importer in Belgium, and got a very of wine and South African wine in particular. So real deep connection with the vineyards. And then Charlene, give us a wave. Hi. Charlene.
Hi.
So she's our lady. She's our lady winemaker. So studied viticulture and winery at Stellenbosch. So almost as academic as Harry, and also incredibly modest, because we were trading stories on tell us something about Constantia, and Charlene went, no, well, I haven't really got too much I can tell you about. And then when I was reading through her her resume, she actually did a harvest for Beta Vivactum, which is the wine Harry's drinking tonight from Constantia. She's also been apprenticed to Giorgio Della Sia from Meerlust, who's a legend winemaker. But when we chatted with Charlene, when she first sort of joined us, she really wanted to get out of the cellar and be talking about wine rather than making it. So it's really great having her on board as well. So, and I just do the drinking of the wine and let these guys tell the story. So I'll move over to Harry.
Cool, thanks.
Oh, and just sorry, one last thing before you start, Harry. I was wondering if anyone could raise a glass if they managed to find a Constantia wine, or if your camera's not on, if you can just type in the chat which wine you might be drinking, even if it's not a Constantia wine, because it'd be quite interesting to know what you've got, and if it's anything that we're particular favourites, and we're going to send you some of our favourites as well afterwards. Oh,
nice.
Okay, over to you, Harry.
Awesome. Yeah, hi again. I think the best way for me to do this is actually just to introduce it again. I know I think all the same people are on, but there might be some new people. So this way of sharing stories, and that's what this really is. We are winos, but for me, wine, and I think I mentioned this last time, was put on the earth as a social tool to bring people together, to help people engage, tell stories, and to accompany food around a table. And this is an extension of that. And it's an extension of another project that I've been doing locally in terms of bringing a whole lot of people together. And, you know, it's through the storytelling that you get to know the wines, and you get to know the look and the feel and the pulse of the place. And not only do the different regions have pulses, but actually the vineyards and the wineries themselves. And we're finding that through bringing people on and chatting about it, that they may be making the exact style, same style wines, but they've got different personalities. And it's through those personalities where you can really get fond of the wines and of the people involved. It's pretty amazing. So, and then just in terms of the touring, you know, I would select the places that I go to. I would select, and I'm sure we're going to talk about what Constantia offers in terms of tours, but I would select places where there's stories, where there's relationships, where I like that personality. And on the tours that I try and set up, or we try and set up, we look at doing an activity besides just drinking wine. You mix it with an activity, and we'll talk about why Constantia is so good for that. And the theory is that by doing an activity and drinking wine, you've got balance. And without that balance, i.e. no activity and just drinking, you might fall over because you're not balanced. So we try and balance things out of it. So yeah, that's the intro. And I'm going to start again. You know, we South Africa, our wine, South African wine. We're the oldest New World wine producing region. We are over 360 years old. So wine was first made in Cape Town, and Constantia forms part of Cape Town. In 1659, it was probably the worst wine anyone's ever tasted, because our friend Jan van Riebeeck didn't know how to make wine, but he made wine, and he made 15 liters, and he said, "Praise be to God, we've made this wine." I don't think he drank all of it. I think he probably spat it out. But that was, and since then we've now got all these years of history, and a large part of that history, in fact, all of that history comes through now from the Constantia region where we're talking about, and the stories and the heritage. And it's quite eclectic, because you've got all this history, and then you've got all these modern wineries and food and Epicurean and galleries and chefs and mountains and activities. And so, I mean, Matt was saying earlier about it not really being, Constantia being a place where it's often overlooked from a tour perspective. Hey, Matt, you were like...
Yeah. For anyone who's booked tours or traveled to the wine regions in Cape Town, it's so far overlooked. I was just telling the guys earlier, there's a story that the M3, the national road linking kind of Franschhoek or the southern suburb Atlantic seaboard to the city, every day people are passing that road, and there's a beautiful wine farm, Nova Zonnestraal, which has a kind of a bunker or a pathway under the M3, the most amazing tasting room. And I mean, people don't even realize it's there. And it's an incredible thing that's so close to the city center, so close to the history of the winelands, and people are driving an hour and a half further when all they have to do is just hop in an Uber in 15 minutes or in one of our tours and get there in 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, and also you were saying that not in the long distant past, but there's a huge proliferation of female winemakers in Constantia, in the farms.
Yeah, almost globally, the highest percentage of female winemakers, over 30%, all female winemakers, and the top dog winemakers as well, which is a huge percentage, almost 5% over the international average, which is incredible.
And that's why you know them, Matt.
Not in that hat.
I think we should see.
Okay, listen, I've just stuck a picture up. This is one of the pictures looking from Table Mountain, so elevated down towards the ocean where the wind comes up, and it sort of shows you the aspect in the mountains. And we'll go into the history and the stories of it, but the big one of the big things that Constantia is doing is the winelands they've got to constantly fight against urbanization, because this is real, this is very expensive real estate. And people would love to take some of those vines and put up housing, and there's a golf course. There's also a prison. We've got a prison in Constantia. It's the most expensive real estate probably around, and we've got a prison there. So that's pretty cool. Yeah, I think even Nelson Mandela was at that prison. So it's the nice, fancy, and in the reality, and the harsh, and the beauty, and all of this kind of stuff, all mixed into one. You've seen that picture. I'm just going to take it off because it gives me a better chance to see everyone. Let's just go into it, you know. Constantia, I think I mentioned last time, and you'll remember that Constantia, the relevance of Constantia to our winemaking is enormous, because it was the start of winemaking, and also because it's ingrained in the Cape Town. Everyone knows Table Mountain. It's part of Table Mountain. Because of urbanization, the vineyards are creeping up the mountain. And and it does that also because it can get the elevation, and it can get the breezes from the ocean, which you could see there, and it gets a lot of rain. And we're talking, quickly, we're talking in Constantia, we're talking about the grapes Sauvignon Blanc, but the white Bordeaux blends and some of the red Bordeaux blends. That's what it's known for, and that's what they do.
What are you drinking, Harry, out of interest?
I've got the Beten Verwachten Sauvignon Blanc. It's Constantia. It's one of the newer farms. Well, it's not newer, but it's still quite an old farm, but it's not the very old original ones. And let's talk about that, because Constantia started in 1685, when that tract of land, actually Constantia started before then. And Josh can tell you a lovely story of a wine farm called Steenberg. And there's this lovely lady called Katharina Russ. Now you must understand that in that time, before Simon van der Stel, we had Jan van Riebeck. He arrived there to set up food stations and wine for the passing ships so that they didn't get scurvy. And he did a good job. And then Simon van der Stel came. He was the first governor, and he was granted this land called Constantia, much bigger than actually Constantia is today. And he started making wine. But before that land was granted, this lady Katharina, now she must have been having a terrible time with her husband, or I think her husband passed away. Her first husband passed away in Germany. And she decided to catch a ship, come to South Africa in a male-dominated society that was with wild animals, craziness, and definitely not with the voting right. Anyway, that's Katharina. I know Josh knows the story better than I do about Katharina, and she had quite a few husbands.
Josh, fill us in.
Yeah, I mean, for those of you that don't know too much about that lady, she was synonymous around the Constantia area. I mean, as kids, we would hear stories about her, and the story goes that she actually stowed away upon a ship, dressed like a man. And Harry's right; she lost her husband at home and decided to make a life choice or change things, and rocked up here in South Africa in Cape Town. And this is obviously before Simon van der Stel actually was granted the land and actually called it Constantia. This was still Jan van Riebeck. She actually arrived just 10 years after he arrived. And what's quite interesting is that she was able to, of course, through marriage, as you were saying, you know, this was no place for a woman. She was actually the only European woman. She was the only woman in town, essentially. And she was able to marry well, quite quickly. And so the story goes, she went through 5 different husbands, obviously accumulating wealth through the time, and eventually settling down in today's Constantia, which was before it even started making wine. What I found quite cool, which is a cute story, or I suppose a bit of scandal even, is that she was said to have had an affair with Simon van der Stel. This is how she was granted some land as well. And there was a road that runs around the back of Constantia, and it was said that the people could see her making I suppose the 17th century equivalent of a walk of shame and we call the road Ladies Mile. It's a back road that used to go and visit the old manor house at Constantia, which of course is where Simon van der Stel set up his house. So anyway, Katerina, yeah, very famous, first farm in Constantia, stowaway, first lady. Yeah, kind of a cool story. Yeah.
But her husbands, they didn't just die of a headache or of food poisoning. Maybe of food poisoning.
No, I know a couple of them. One was riding an elephant, and he was out hunting, hunting hippos, and apparently fell off. Another one was apparently attacked by tribesmen, the local Khoisan people that lived here, and another one was poisoned, and so there was definitely scandal around the way that I think she got sick and tired of them. I don't think they lasted long. None of the marriage very long. So.
The restaurant at Steenberg is named after and their top sparkling wine's named after her now. It's quite cool.
Yeah. So her first husband. So yeah, they got married. Nice tract of land. Wealthy guy. He liked having female slaves. He wasn't the most honorable guy. But on the wedding night, apparently they had these horse-driven carts. And the drivers were racing to get back to the suburb Stellenbosch, and then the carts crashed. And Katerina's now new husband wasn't very happy with this, so he went and spoke to the driver of the other cart, and they got into a fight, and he got stabbed in between the ribs on his wedding night. He didn't die from that, luckily, and he managed to have some kids. But this particular husband, died when they were hunting for lion. And apparently the lion ate him, and then Katerina jumped on a horse with a gun, chased the lion, and shot it. That's how. And then she was left with a nice house. So
no, but I've done a proposal for some clients. It was actually a UK operator. It was for his own proposal, and so we were trying to pick a wine. He loves Constantia. He was looking over it, so we picked the Katerina bubbly, just as a sort of like forewarning for what he was in for. And I think she's got so many stories, and then I think what she established in Constantia is at the time she was an incredible woman.
She called it before Steenberg. She got this land before Simon van der Stel was granted the land. Yeah. She actually leased it from Simon van der Stel. And then when he got given his land through some sort of negotiating, I don't know, she managed to get it. But she called it Swanaveda. And Swanaveda is feeding place for swans. And I think the story goes that she remembers the swans from where she came from in Germany. But we don't have swans. What we have is Egyptian geese. And they're brown and they're noisy and they shit everywhere. And so she was a bit confused. And now you'll see on the emblems of the
Steenberg. Still on there. This is the lid off my one. It's on everything. So she lives on.
The swans are there, but they weren't actually swans. They were geese, and they were a pest, and they still are a pest. So that's another interesting thing. But it's interesting starting with Steenberg, because often people think Constantia, Groot Constantia, is the original farm. It's not. It is the most well-known because that's the land that was granted to Simon van der Stel. And you see, Simon van der Stel was a brilliant guy, and he really improved winemaking, and he extended out from Constantia winemaking and farming out to Stellenbosch, which is a wine region, then to Paarl and to Franschhoek. I'm not going to go into those details, but for me, this Constantia area is almost like the umbilical cord to all the other wine regions. And although Stellenbosch is the heart of our wine now, it was Constantia that actually enabled that. And Constantia, from the very beginning of a place, it's like it's gone through a cycle of being fully alive to almost dead, and then back again and revitalized. And it's always had these battles. And it's now I think it's in a safe space. There's too much foreign investment in there. And with the historical, Groot Constantia is owned by the government, which begs the question, if it's owned by the government and it's in a trust, and it's the South African people that are beneficiaries of that trust, we should be getting free wine, I think. Maybe. I'm going to go ask him when I'm there next time I taste. But the point is, it's more stable now. And so what are these things that caused all of this? You know, shortly after Simon van der Stel and and a couple, well, in the 1800s, a guy, Cloutier, a big, well-known family, bought Constantia. And through this family, they made this Vin de Constance, a sweet, sweet wine, which was the equivalent of a Bordeaux Sauterne or a Takai. I don't know, it's like a noble sweet made out of Muscat and Semillon. And this was the drink of all the celebrities overseas. So Napoleon Bonaparte, Jane Austen, what's the other guy? Charles Dickens. These guys wrote about it. These were the wines. And so this is what established the trade routes from South Africa wine into Europe. And hopefully with Brexit now into Britain. Don't know.
I mean, Josh, just in terms of, I mean, when you were doing your tastings back in the day, I mean, this is a wine everyone's asking about. And the Napoleon link in particular.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's often marketed as Napoleon's wines. It's obviously been famous, as Harry just mentioned, with the famous authors. There's actually, if you're just talking about that sort of thing, it is actually quite funny. There's a beautiful poem that was written by a guy named Charles Baudelaire, and he refers to the sweet wine, the Vin de Constance, as the elixir of his wife's kiss when he's here in South Africa and she's away back home. And he just talks about the fact that it's, you know, it's nothing else satisfies, his taste. But when, when he tastes the reminds him of his wife's kiss, which I think is quite an amazing story as well.
That's cool.
So at that stage of Constantia's life, things were flying. We were internationally known. That's in the 1800s. But, or even the 17, it was pre-1760 actually. After 1760, things started falling apart. And then in the 1800s, there was this thing, there was this sort of, powdery mildew, which is a thing, it's a disease of the plants. But worse than that, in the 1880s, there was this little louse, and it's impacted all the wine regions, except for maybe America. It was called phylloxera. And phylloxera chows all of the roots and all the vines across the world, in France, Italy, Spain, except for the sandy areas, South Africa, were getting killed. And it almost ended the wine production worldwide until someone happened on the fix for that, and that was to get American rootstocks, and then you graft whatever this Vitis vinifera, the classic grapes, onto the American rootstock, and these lice phylloxera doesn't eat the American rootstock. And the reason for that is because the American vines back then were Vitis lambrusca rather than Vitis vinifera or something like that. I can't remember their name. But there was a different family, and they were resistant to this phylloxera because this louse comes from America. But as the trade opened up between the countries, and French wines started sending their vines to America, and then America started sending their vines to France, and then Jan van Riebeeck brings the vines back from France to South Africa. It was that transport that it's like this epidemic now, it was called the grape epidemic. No. It was serious, and you can read about it in any region except for Chile, because Chile doesn't have phylloxera. If you want to go there, because it's got a desert to its north, it's got an ocean to its left, it's got a mountain to its right, and it's got the snow to its, so that the louse can't get in there, and it's very sandy soil. So that was a very down time for Constantia. It was like, it was on its knees, and then the good times and the exports and all the things were happening started to decline as well, even before that, because the quality of the wines got poorer and the prices got more expensive. So they just started cutting off those supplies, and it was brought to its knees. And then the government bought it, and government, even with the best will in the world, couldn't do anything right. And this is very interesting, until a fire burnt down the big manor house at Constantia, which was Simon van der Stel's house. It's also a winery. And it's through this fire that the gentrification started to happen. And a very famous guy called Paul Sauer was the guy who was running this project. Now, Paul Sauer, us young guys like me, will know, because Canon Corp has got their Bordeaux blend. It's called Paul Sauer, named after the same individual who did a lot of good stuff and maybe some bad stuff. And that wine got 100 points from an international critic. Now, it's 100 points out of 100, if you want to know, and you can't get better than that. So that was the first 100 point we've got, and it was called Paul Sauer. So his name pops up, as do a lot of the names. Anyway, I'm just talking. Sorry.
I mean, in terms of like the export, and I don't know, Justin. No, not the export, but in terms of the wines that really got put Constantia on the map. You need to unmute, Justin.
Sorry. Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think for me, I started in the wine business in 93, and I was in Europe, and I came back to South Africa, and I decided to go into the wine industry. And at that moment, things were changing radically. And a big reason was, of course, the imminent end of apartheid. And, when I grew up in Constantia in 76, this was the time of the Soweto riots. And the whole of South Africa was in a state of chaos. And the ensuing problems, social and political problems that ensued, had a big impact on the wine industry, amongst many other things. And you saw that, the wine industry had been devastated by these political decisions that the apartheid government took. And what happened leading up to the end of apartheid was this massive influx of foreign investors and this interest in renewing the export market that we used to enjoy. So I saw that at the hotel I worked, that new producers were coming online, and it was phenomenal how the industry grew back at that time. And I was fortunate enough to import some of these wines into, although that was some years later, in 2006, into Belgium. And Belgium is a very French dominated market, but very competitive. But South African wines were already people were showing great interest in South African wines for a lot of reasons. And Constantia is a region that I think has grown and matured. It's gone through a lot of difficulties, as Harry pointed out. And the last hurdle, I thought, for Constantia was certainly this embargo against South Africa. But the wines that are coming out from there now, like Eagle's Nest and their Shiraz, are fabulous, complex, beautifully balanced, and quite unusual for an area like Constantia to produce. But as you'll see in that photograph, some of the newer wineries are right up on the slopes of Constantia, where there used to be forests. Now, as Harry mentioned, in 2000, these vineyards were destroyed by fire, and this meant a lot of new owners came into the valley, and some of the most prized and most attractive new wineries are to be found in this area, with gorgeous views, beautiful restaurants, amazing selection of restaurants and wines, and it's all on our doorstep. So for me, it's a very undervisited area for many tourists who come to Cape Town, because they immediately think of Stellenbosch and Franschhoek, but yet there's so much history just in Constantia, and there's such a wide array of wines. And I remember, one last point, Dougie Jooste and Lowell Jooste, whose wines I used to sell at Vaughan Johnson's when they came out with the Vin de Constance. I think it was them that resurrected this wine, and they immediately had a following. And from those, I think, I can't remember when they started, but I think it was in the early 90s, that they, or late 80s, that they started investing and producing, aiming to produce this Vin de Constance, which was selling like you can't imagine in Vaughan Johnson's, exporting all over the world. And we didn't have the restraints or the limitations. So I remember a Swiss man, Mr. Meyer, used to come, a young guy, filled a whole container, no limits, just exported everything, made a fortune. And he did this like 6 times a year. And this is in the heyday of South African exports, where it was so cheap. Exchange rates were probably like today, but right now, but things were just incredible. And Constantia just flourished. So yes, I don't want to speak too long, but yes, that's what it was like for me.
You know, there's two wineries, and Justin mentioned Eagle's Nest and Constantia Glen. They're not the newest. I think Beau Constantia or maybe Silver Misters, but we're talking about this urbanization, and so what happens is this fire burns the mountain and the forests that are up on the slopes of the mountain, and it's so steep there that you can't actually build houses, and that opportunity is when people came in, and because of this now burnt area, no forests, that's where they grew the vines for Eagle's Nest. I think Eagle's Nest only makes 3 wines. That Shiraz is one of my favorite Shirazes. It's a good Shiraz. The other
it's also got the best place to take young children when you just want them to lose themselves in a forest, and so you can enjoy your wine. It'd be my #1 tip. Everyone is looking for jungle gyms and things like that, but you can still see them and you might have to catch them. But in Eagle's Nest, you can just lose them in the forest. And it's so steep that they're going to come back eventually. So it's a top tip to take kids to.
But you know, there's one other thing that they offer, which is amazing. They take you up in the Land Rover right up to the top vineyards. And I've done tastings there with some French clients overlooking the valley. And the marketing manager does a tasting of the wines high up on the Constantiaberg, and it's absolutely awesome. So highly recommend that as well.
I met one of the guys from Eagle's Nest well, we might as well talk about the Constantia Fresh, at the Constantia Fresh. And I was just chatting to him, and I'm quite friendly and I talk a lot. And
what is the Constantia Fresh?
Yeah. Okay, well, let me talk about, so Baten Verwachten, this farm, owned by Lars Mark, and I got to know him actually through a Swedish lady who knows Lars, and I'll get to your question, Ingram, but she asked me to give a tasting. It was her birthday, and she comes and does movies here in South Africa, and she's been in South Africa like at least 3 times a year for the last 15 years. She calls it home. And she said, no, I need to, for her tasting, she had 60 Swedish guests at the Mount Nelson, and I had to give a tasting of 8 wines which represented the country, and they couldn't be the same variety. But I needed to have the Baten Verwachting, and that's because of Lars. And Lars is an awesome guy, friendly guy, and he bought Baten Verwachting, and the winemaker's been there for over 16 years. And what they've set up there is this thing called the Constantia Fresh. And the Constantia Fresh, for me, is the best of all of the wine festivals that are out there. And it's stuck in our Constantia, it's close. And the reason why it's so good is they limit the numbers and they make the tickets very expensive, well, compared to other things. But I think this last ticket was like 700 Rand per person. But with that, you can taste the wines, and all the restaurateurs or the chefs come and they do food. And because it's not packed, and you've got live music, you've got all the wineries there. And there was 2 very good stories. The one was the guy from Eagle's Nest. So I'm chatting to him, and you chat to a lot of people, and you're drinking wine. So you're getting clever, but that cleverness that you get with the wine drinking is short-lived, because the next morning you've forgotten all that cleverness that you were speaking about. And the guy phones me a couple of weeks later. Hi, Harry. We've just done this thing, and he's got an interview, a radio show with interviews, and he was interviewing a woman from France who does harvest, and she's like quite popular there. And she was talking about Cape Wine Academy and about me in this interview. And I was like, okay, cool, but I couldn't remember who he was. So that was the one funny story, and I got onto it very quickly as soon as I realized who it was, and that was cool. The second story, and this is even funnier. You know, I'm from the Melck family. The Melck family's, I'm 8th generation. It's a very strong family, and we have a reunion with usually with 5 generations at it. So I'm at this year's Constantia Fresh, and there's a wine farm there called Silver Mist. And I'm looking at this woman who's serving the wine from Silver Mist, and her name is Tessa Melck. Now my sister's also called Tessa. So I'm looking at her, and I'm looking at a name tag, which just happens to be over here. And she says, "Are you interested?" I said, "No, it's just that you've got my sister's name, but you don't look like my sister." And so she said, no, Harry, we met at the last family reunion." "Oh, cool. That's cool. I didn't know that." Anyway, she's part and parcel of the Silver Mist. And that extends further now, because I'm talking a lot, but I'm passionate and I'm happy. La Colombe is on this farm, and it's organic. And La Colombe is close to our heart, because right next to Escape and Explore is the food barn, and the chef Frank, who started La Colombe, and he's moved now. So all of these things are circles of life, and I just like those kind of stories. So it was a very interesting.
And I think I should add that a Melck family reunion is slightly different to your normal family reunion. So Harry is the 8th generation Melck. I think we mentioned it before, but one of the oldest farms, 1685, is his cousin. That's one of the Melck farms. So if you're forgiven if you don't remember one of your family members.
No, yeah.
So they're the originals. I mean, how many people will you have at a reunion?
Yeah, over 100. But definitely, the test is how many generations are sitting there. So the last one, we had 5 generations. We had someone who was 88, and we had Sienna, who was my daughter, 2.5. So anyway, that's enough about me. We're talking about Constantia. So we've spoken about Steenberg, we've spoken about Constantia a bit. And then Josh, Josh worked at and basically grew up at Constantia Eitzig. Josh, don't you want to talk about the stories there?
Yeah, for sure. So growing up in Constantia Eitzig, which just to translate for those that don't understand Afrikaans, means the lookout. It's a beautiful piece of land that, as you've shown on that photograph, looks over the False Bay. So anyway, but growing up sort of on the foothills of Eitzig, there was a very well-known family, the Mackays, who owned the land. And on the farm itself was actually a cricket oval. I don't know how much you guys know about cricket, but just a summertime sport here. And it's actually been host to the Constantia Fresh as well on a couple of years. So a lot of people know the piece of land that I'm talking about, but a beautiful area. And we used to be, as kids, grow up and, just fortunate enough to be sort of lucky enough to play a couple of games as a kid. So that was my first introduction to the farm. Growing up,
Josh, just quickly, I want to interrupt because you're being very modest. Josh was a professional cricket player, whilst in between being a lawyer and becoming a wine taster. So he in the UK went and paid to play cricket, which is quite cool.
Yeah.
So I think when you said you had a little game of cricket, it was probably quite serious.
Well, yeah, I've been being fortunate enough to be invited to these sort of things. So yeah, I suppose it did help being able to play the game a little bit. But anyway, so going to the farm was fantastic, and actually I was lucky enough to know also through family friends the winemaker who's actually gone on to produce his own label now, and his name is Andre Rousseau. If you ever come across the wines, please give them a try, but they are very difficult to find. He makes very, very limited amounts. But Andre actually took me under his wing when I gave up the law thing, and I decided I wasn't probably going to go all the way in cricket. I decided to come back to Cape Town and actually got under Andre Rousseau's wing. And he kind of took me through the farm, took me through the ins and outs of Constantia, taught me about the history. Katerina gave me a bit of the scandal. And of course, I was lucky enough to rub shoulders with a great family like the Mackays. And a lot of people know about them because, of course, we had those iconic restaurants. We spoke about Franschhoek and Paarl. I'd never got an opportunity to go to La Colombe when I was growing up, but I was lucky enough to almost every Sunday go to a place called the River Cafe, which most families would have known was a really fantastic place. And then they had another restaurant. So just from my point of view, Eitzig was really an iconic place, an iconic farm in the area, you know, that was welcome to families, produced, obviously, you know, from my opinion, I still go on and tell people I'm very biased towards the wines. Some of the best wines that I think South Africa can produce are found in that area. And yeah, some great people, some great owners. Just lost it on the McKays, the old owners that actually sold the farm on. They went on into Botswana to help with elephant conservation. So yeah, good people, good stories, good wine. Yeah, what more do you want?
And your favorite Eitzig wine, if we're gonna pick one, or Google it.
Sure. Actually, where I got introduced to Semillon, which is a varietal that a lot of people are not too familiar with. It's often used as a blending varietal in Sauvignon. But when produced on its own, gone through a little bit of oak, it's actually, yeah, one of the most complex. It is actually a white wine that has an aging potential, something super interesting, something I learned while being in Constantia. Yeah, I would definitely have to say the Semillon, which comes out of Constantia, would be unique, interesting, and some of my favorite food wines. So yeah, that's it.
Cool.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned André Rousseau. So I did some consulting work to a wine farm called Reboxkloof, completely different region. It's a warm region. It's in Paarl. It's about an hour and a half, 2 hours drive from Constantia Eitzig. And just to tell you, André Rousseau just won Best Sauvignon Blanc in the country, I think, this year. And and I got to meet him because he was doing the viticulture. He was looking at how to make the vines more productive, and he is so humble. And he used to drive every day from Constantia there, and he's just a hard worker, and he's a salt of the earth guy.
Yeah,
So,
I think he's still grapes from a whole bunch of different regions. So I think he drives, as you say, from Paarl to Constantia to Elgin. And I mean, we have about 6 regions here in the Western Cape. I think he visits all of them on a daily basis. So yeah, you're right.
yeah, man. So
Yeah, so let's, yeah, I mean, I've got a question just popped up, and I don't know, Harry, if this is a good time, because you know, everyone, we don't have work to go to. We've got a bed to go to. Maybe finish off a bottle of wine, but some other people might have work to go to. Sorry to mention that word. But I don't know if there's any. I mean, one question I've got here, and I'd love to open it up so people can unmute and just fire away. But in terms of Constantia versus the sort of better known Stellenbosch and Franschhoeks, and what's a good argument for visiting? I mean, I might ask Matt this first, because you can't wear that hat and not be prominent in this conversation. Just in terms of what, you know, if someone's limited on time, you know, what would you say? Why would you use Constantia ahead of, say, Stellenbosch or Franschhoek?
She said a multiple of reasons, and I think it's so subjective. But I think often, as what Justin was saying earlier, Constantia gets overlooked. I think maybe because it's so close to the city centre. But whether you're hiking from Table Mountain, a 4-hour beautiful walk over the hills of Table Mountain, learning about terroir, aspects, climate, everything that goes into winemaking, and then coming down into Beau Constantia and the Constantia Valley, incredible, something a lot of wine regions won't offer. But I think Constantia is just this place which has got 10 farms, commercial farms, and then you got the hidden off the radar farmers which we operate in as well. So close to each other, offering food. You got art. You got some of the best art galleries in the Western Cape, Southern Hemisphere. Everything's so close knit. The history, everything goes back, and you can visit at least 4 or 5 farms realistically, not the usual travel agent 4 or 5 farms, which is quite hard when you're traveling out to Stellenbosch, Franschhoek, and those regions. But 4 or 5 farms, lunch, and as from a guest point of view, I feel that as a guide, and from a guest satisfaction point of view, you can change the tour and you can change the day far easier at a Constantia, because it offers red, white, it's got views, it's got food, all within literally a 20-minute drive. something that not many other regions, not in South Africa, but not necessarily in the world, offer as well. So it's very versatile, and from a guest satisfaction point of view, it's super easy to deliver, I think.
It's also it's very easy to integrate into so it's not always about the wine, the tours, but if you're doing a Cape Peninsula tour, you're doing a Table Mountain tour, you can still make it about that day and still have a lunch or pop into a winery on the way, because you can right through it.
Yeah, I think the key thing is once you've done Constantia, if it quite often it's used where people haven't got enough time to do a full day wine tour.
Exactly.
And once you've been to Constantia, even if you've done half a day, you don't feel like you've missed out, because you've been to somewhere that can claim to have the oldest vineyards outside of Europe. It's the original. So you feel like you're although you're missing out on Stellenbosch and Franschhoek, like Harry's explained at the start, this is the origin of South African wine, and the history. If anyone hasn't been there, the history just shouts out. I mean, Josh was talking about the architecture, Cruet Constantia. It's a story on its own. So sometimes people see it as a maybe a second area to go and visit, but once they've been there and they've gone, I've really stumbled on it. And each wine farm is less than, we'd say 5-minute drive apart. So you within 15 minutes you've done you've gone from one end of the valley to the other.
Sure.
And each, it's so different because you've got the high vineyards, and then like all those Steenberg 1682. It's got the history. It's a really modern sort of winemaking facility, and then you go somewhere like Cruet Constantia with all the history, and then Matt, and I mean, it'd be interesting. I don't know, Justin or anyone chip in terms of some of the little secrets, and that's something that I think really brings it alive, is some of the little secret vineyards. Who's got that? Yeah. Let us know some secrets.
Yeah, no, not. I mean, I know you guys didn't say too much about secrets as far as that, but we've been talking a lot about the wine and the cultural side of things. And I know Matt mentioned the hike over Table Mountain, but something to note is sort of how adventurous you can be in Constantia. If you don't know, there's a zip line at the top of Constantia.
Exactly.
There's a new bike park that I don't really know.
Oh, I've done that bike park 100 times. Trust me.
Yeah, me too. It's awesome.
But it's done properly by real bike enthusiasts. It's from all sort of levels of biking. There's an incredible old forest, pine forest, where you can take, people ride horses, you can go cycling. There used to be a paintball gun sort of shooting range, all sorts of things. Anyway, adventure, that's what I'm sort of about, and a lot you can do there.
If you're gonna do a nice 4 hours an afternoon, so you're gonna start with a lunch and then do some wine farm, say 2 or 3 wine farms. What would you do?
So for me, if you're asking that question to me, of course, Steenberg is fantastic. Cruet Constantia with the history, and then one of the small, take your pick. Sure, I'm just going to go randomly and mention one of the new ones, Constantia Glen. I love that one, but hey, you can't go wrong. Bow Constantia, High Constantia, Silver Mist, Baton Verwachting, Eitzig has just put a whole new section of little boutique shops. You can go and get ice cream.
Awesome.
You can go buy arts and crafts. Which is happening. It's there's markets there on a Friday night. There's something to do there. Yeah, any day, anytime, any weather. That's awesome.
Matt, you introduced me to High Constantia, and I think that's a good little, just to give an example of a little gem. I don't know if you can tell them a little bit, because I think this is what people want when they go, is that when someone's asked, well, what would you do as a classic 4-hour excursion, then what we would do is give you a good lunch spot and a couple of wine farms that people have heard of. But what will actually happen would be the good lunch spot, and then during that lunch, a discussion with Matt, and then he ruins our plans completely, all those sort of like weeks and months of work, and we'll take people to these type of places.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think that's a good point, is that from a service point of view, from a guest as well, is that Constantia, you can pull a lot of things out the bag. You have coastal and mountain on either side. You have all these activities which we're going on about, but driving into Groot Constantia, there was a mention someone was drinking that. I think it was you, Gretchen. As you go into the gates of Groot Constantia, just on the right, 30 meters before you enter it, is a High Constantia, which is an incredible little farm, family owned, incredible. It's won 2050 or 2014 best MCC in South Africa. Incredible sparkling wine, the Class Andre. It's managed. The Stel is managed by an old Cape Coloured family, husband and wife, and you can ask them anyway. They'll sit down, have a glass too many, but the day can go away with you, and you get these small little I don't know, like injections of bespoke but authentic wine farms, which I think is quite rare to find and unforced, and often very missed,
So High Constantia, thanks to Matt's introduction, it was probably about 4 years ago. Whereas if you've got a big multi-generational family, I mean, it's small. It's got a lawn area that looks out onto a monastery, which is always like good viewing. Makes good gossip. And these big wine barrels and all their wine there, and this lovely couple that can answer. So unpretentious, can answer any question that you'd ever want, and they make you completely at home. And they literally just put up a closed sign for the wine tasting, and you just have the place to yourself. So we've done like a food event there. They don't have a kitchen, so they're off. We've Nikki Gibbs, who does our pop-up picnics and that type of thing, and so she sort of sets up a sort of temporary kitchen in their office, and they just let you do whatever you want to do there. And it's all about for them, it's not so commercial. It's all about just having a good group there, and not sort of trying to pump the numbers through, which I think makes a massive difference.
The owner there, Ingram, the owner there is a guy called David van Niekerk, and he was a banker. He came down
that explains it.
And he bought High Constantia, and his deal with the whole relationship with wine was that exactly that. He's doing it for the passion of wine, and obviously he's looking to sell the wines, but he's often got barrels, and he'll say, I'll sell you half a barrel of Cab Franc. And you go, okay, cool, but if I buy half that barrel, that means I'm going to only drink Cab Franc and your Cab Franc for the rest of the day. So it's a bit limiting. But when you get a bunch of people together and you buy that barrel. He's actually subdivided that High Constantia property, and a friend of mine bought the old house that his parents used to live in. So they live there now. So I often just invite myself to their house saying, listen, I don't have food. Can you please feed me? And then I try to get wine through the fence.
Can we take guests there with you, Harry, when we do that? Will they do the same?
Well, I don't know if they get lunch. I've known the guy for a long time.
But it's actually just quickly on High Constantia, if we've got a picnic issue. So like we do these pop-up picnics. We've used that a number of times because they've got a lovely sort of undercover terrace. And once you've got that relationship with the people, it's going to look, we're going to come and taste some wine, and we're probably going to taste a hell of a lot of wine because it's raining today. And then just set up a whole picnic on their terrace, and people coming in doing their normal wine tastings think you're kind of royalty. It's like, what are these guys doing here? So someone asked a question, and I don't know, Charlene or Justin, or like a lot of people said, like, they want to stay in the waterfront, which is sort of where we pick most people up from in the morning. Mark asked, yeah, and then persuading people to stay in Constantia or further away. I mean, from my point of view, having sort of been dealing with that quite a lot, sometimes I don't even. Sometimes I just give people what they want because they can visit Constantia so easily. It's only 20 minutes. Yeah, well, it's 15 minutes.
It's not even
away.
20 minutes.
Yeah, so it's really close. So it's kind of like if it's a battle to persuade them to go and do it, but if people go and do that, then on the flip side, it's only 15 minutes, 20 minutes to the waterfront, but you're 20 minutes to the penguins. You're the hike up the back from Constantia to the top of Table Mountain is probably one of my favorite hikes. It's a lot easier than the normal hike up Platteklip Gorge, which is pretty it's like doing the Empire State Building twice, twice steps wise. The hike up the back, you've got this nice jeep track that you can, still hard work, but when you get to the top, there's a dam And if you ignore the no swimming signs, you can go for a nice swim at the top. And it's and you've got, depending on the just before we went into lockdown, the little dices, which are our sort of provincial flower. It's one of the valleys there that you can find those type of things. So you can stay in Constantia, you can do Table Mountain, literally walk from some of the accommodations. You've got the wine, and you're only 15 minutes back to the waterfront, and then 15-20 minutes to the penguins and all the beaches. So it's quite a winner, and it's normally a lot cheaper. And the restaurants will probably be the key
Excellent.
reason. Yeah. Well, you're the guides. You tell.
You reminded me of a story, Ingram. So I'm part of this drone company, and my friend Ian went to go map at Klein Constantia, and he's got a Land Rover, so he couldn't use it because it was broken, and he wanted to use my Toyota because it was still working. But he went up the Toyota road, and it gets so steep there that the Toyota, which is supposed to do this land, couldn't go. It would go and then stop, and it was because of the sand on a hard surface. And so it's seriously steep up there. And he almost couldn't get, luckily he had a drone, so he just stopped, and then he used the drone to get to the elevation and the flight. But that was very interesting.
Harry, I just caught out of the corner of my eye Chris's wine glass a second ago. So I think if anyone in the world wants a quote right now, Chris is the guy to email. Chris, shows your wine glass there. It's quite special. It's huge.
Yeah, I don't screw around, man. I mean, it's a whole bottle.
Hey, Chris had another important question from Matt, which is, and Chris is a latecomer, so he missed this earlier, which is, what the hell is that thing behind you, Matt?
So this is an example, Chris, of an incredibly full-bodied, well-balanced wine.
Look, move your head, Matt.
Make it in a better angle. Here she goes.
That's quite full-bodied, yeah.
Well, but this is Harry, quite unpretentious.
But unpretentious wine. I think you got to remember the reason why we're kind of embracing this at the moment is, as of the 1st of May, we just found out today what we're allowed to do. So, I mean, I think we're into 5 weeks now, but we're allowed out to go to the shops, no wine, for smoke, because there's no cigarettes. It's been like uproar. But you're not allowed to even exercise other than in your garden. And on the 1st of May, we just found out now we're allowed to exercise between, I think, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. So we've been given a little window to go out and exercise from the 1st of May. So, entertainment's very easy for us at the moment.
They said it's a 5K radius around your house, but where we stay, 5Ks means we're in the ocean, but they've banned the beaches. So I want I'm not allowed to use that as my radius. Can I add that piece of distance onto the 5Ks on the other side to make it more like 8Ks? That's I know.
Any
clause to go.
So someone asked about the nursery route. Gretchen, sorry, you asked me privately, so I hope it wasn't a private question. Well, a nursery route, is this something we need to know about, or are we talking about the hiking route? You're muted. You're muted.
No, I was just wondering if that's what you typically did when you were talking about the route up from Constantia side. So the nursery ravine. So I'm just having a look at which wine guides we've got here.
There's several. So you can going back to a couple. So I try to answer a couple of these. So from a sales point of view on Constantia, what I always would try to sell these when I was in London trying to sell them, but is that for guests who don't know what they want to do, and you ripping your hair out thinking, Christ, how do I please these guys? It's the perfect, because you have to leave it up to the guide to choose, and you have that versatility of red, white, rosé, sparkling wine. You have active, non-active, everything. So everything's so close. So for guests who are families, honeymooners, or single travelers that they want to have a dabble in it, they're not quite sure. If they specifically want certain Bordeaux style wines or certain Rhone style wines, they'll have an idea, and they'll probably guide the agent as to where they want to go. You know, they'll be dictating. But for people who don't know what they want to do, they'll kind of sometimes, it's perfect for that, because then as a guide, you can work with so much, which is incredible. And then going back to things like Kirstenbush Gardens, which you can start the Nature's Ravine or Nursery Ravine from, which could go up. It's a slightly easier side than, say, doing Table Mountain. Sometimes you get guests who are hell-bent on hiking or walking Table Mountain, which is what you would do from Clutterclip or Indian Fenster, whichever their kind of skill set is. But you got Skeleton Gorge, Nature's Ravine, Cecilia's Forest.
Those hikes, Matt, the one I was thinking of, which is what's it called? The one that goes, it's the Jeep track that goes from Constantia Neck up to the
Cecilia's Forest.
Mm.
Yeah.
So that's very doable.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Orange Kloof. Or Kloof.
And so that's quite doable. It's a Jeep track rather than, so Skeleton Gorge and Nature's Ravine. Skeleton Gorge sounds like it's hard. Nature's Ravine doesn't sound like it's so hard, but it's still a fair hike. And so to hike and then drink, hike, eat and drink wine would probably be a bit ambitious. But something like from the hike from Constantia Neck.
Obviously, is that you would find guests saying, "Oh, you're super fit and you've run 15 marathons 20 years ago. We want to do Indian Fenster." Then it's very easy to go to Constantia. You can do a 10-minute hike up a small hill and walk down. It's very adaptable. All the walks from Constantia, from the botanical gardens, all ending easily. So that's the nice thing about the versatility of Constantia, I think.
And they end in the winelands. They end in the winelands, so you can go have a lunch and go have a little toppie.
Up a mountain, down a beer or a glass of wine, yeah.
Absolutely. Now, seeing as, I'm going to let out a secret. It's not, it's a big secret to us, but it's probably not such a big secret to you, because Lion's Head, which is something that everyone asks to hike, is so busy now. So we found our own, and this is where I talked about proposal that we did, about a month or two before all this sort of happened. Is up Devil's Peak, which is the other peak, the other side of Table Mountain. So you hike as if you're going up to Devil's Peak, but instead of going up to the peak, which is really quite still, it's harder than Lion's Head. You go through a saddle, and there's a peak that looks over the whole of the Constantia Valley. So you've started in the City Bowl. So we've picked them up from the waterfront. They've not spent more than 10 or 15 minutes in a car. They're hiking. We've ended up at this place, which is got the views of Lions. Like it's as spectacular as Lion's Head, but literally not one other person there. So I'm yet to have, the path's still quite thin there, and it's one of the ravines that go down into Kirstenbosch, but it's a steep one, so you don't get many people coming up it. And then so you've done the city, you feel like you've had a Table Mountain experience or a hiking experience, but you haven't killed yourself because it's maybe an hour and a half to 2 hour round trip. And then after that, you can reward yourself with having looked at the Constantia Valley, someone like Josh and Charlene and everyone telling you about why the terroirs going to make your Sauvignon Blanc taste so much better, and sort of whetting your appetite, and then head into the valley for the afternoon. So there's lots of little hikes, and it's almost one that a lot of these things just kind of happen, rather than us because everyone wants to do the iconic stuff, and then like I'm saying, it's nice having the guides on. I don't normally get to do this, but they are the guys that ruin all our well-laid plans.
You must just remember, Constantia it is Cape Town, and the irony is that on any given tour, 9 times out of 10, you're going to be driving definitely with the view of Constantia, but through or past Constantia to get to many of these regions, these tours that people want to go on. And it's just, it's the fabric of Cape Town. It's as much as the fabric as going up the mountain or going to the Cape Peninsula, I believe, but I'm subjective.
It's almost as much as a fabric as hemp or marijuana in Colorado, Alexa.
Or Nuruk.
I also wanted to mention something there, guys. I saw that there.
Can we just welcome your dog first, Josh?
Yeah, there we go. That's
the dog.
Remy, everybody. Remy Martin, like the cognac. If you.
So this is another little secret I'll let you into. So a number of the guides have dogs, and so it's, you know, like we can't obviously you can, so on the first day, I mean, that, and Remy's been on a number of tours, and it's the same with a number of the other dogs. So quite often after the first chat on the day, oh, I'm missing my dog, I'm loving my dog, I've been on safari, and then before you know it, there's a dog going wine tasting, and this is probably this particular dog knows the wine farms better than anyone.
Well, you're not wrong. I mean, he's been to Maison. He's actually eaten at Chef's Warehouse, which is actually pretty fine dining. So he's had some pretty serious meals already. I just wanted to mention as well, I saw a message from Scott saying that the Alphen Hotel is a must-see. And something that's quite amazing, if you guys do miss the daytime hours, because of course the wine farms are mainly only open during the day, you can definitely visit the Alphen Hotel. There's a place called the Rose Bar. Now I'm definitely giving my secrets away, but that is a really hidden gem in Constantia that you guys should go and visit. And then another one, of course, which may be on the map already, is called the Cellars Hohenhort, which of course has one of the finest selections of wines in Constantia, but South Africa and international wines, and the restaurant must be one of the top in the country. But yeah, the Cellars Hohenhort, the Alphen Hotel, after hours, Constantia, definitely one of my favorites. You know.
Why the Rose Bar, Josh? What do you like about that?
The setting. It's this beautiful. Old architecture. It overlooks a beautiful garden, and then I love the drink. So the wine selection. As I say, I'm very picky when I do go to a restaurant as far as the wine selection is concerned. It's I mean, if I'm putting all my cards on the table, it is a great place for a date, you know, if you want to impress the lady.
Did you put all of your cards on there, Josh, or did you just put one of them?
Well, yeah, just showing one or two there, just looking for it.
No, I can vouch for the Rose Bar. It's, we almost got married there, Trace and I. It's beautiful, and the DJs sometimes come there. They're also pretty cool.
No, well, I mean, I just want to say a big thanks to everyone. I don't know if anyone's got any other questions. I want to know what kind of commission Scott's on at the Alphen. We'll find out that later. But it's,
but if you guys do have questions, if you guys have questions, you can just email Tad and send them through.
And we've already done our well, I haven't done my top 5 list isn't going to help you at all, but some of the guides have done their top 5 lists of Constantian wines. Mine will be the cheapest 5 Constantia wines, but they'll give you their best 5.
Ingram, you need to say vergeleken out loud.
Okay. Well, if you don't know, I'm from the UK originally, and so when I'm normally talking to you guys, I can say whatever I want and you would be none the wiser. And so We're Africa's terrible because now they're doing, since that started and it's in Cape Town, they get to listen to what I'm saying on the side of the pitch. And I really struggle with some of these Afrikaan long words. Vegeleken. How's that? Have I improved?
The best one I heard was Gansbaai being pronounced by a BBC reporter as Gansabi.
Gansabi.
Like wasabi. Yeah.
Well, actually, Charlene, you shouldn't pronounce it because you proper.
Afrikaans, yeah. Vergeleken. You gotta
Charlene,
get
Charlene, while
you didn't even say Afrikaans right, Ingram. You said Afrikaan.
Oh, sorry.
To get the lingo.
Okay, I don't think they need to hear you all picking on me now. I just, but Charlene, now you're unmuted. In terms of your time with the wine that Harry's drinking, Bedevervacten, what sort of drawn you to Constantia as a Pretoria poppy, as you describe yourself?
Oh no, Poppy never, but Pretoria bread. No, I mean, I was actually just quite lucky. When I was in my final year at university, I happened to have, it was actually one of my mom's friends, Nick Christodoulou, who owned Amber Louis, the little winery in Hout Bay. So it was literally just a matter of my mom calling in a favor, getting me in. So not that exciting, but yeah, it was very cool to work for him. It was a very small winery. And he basically got me hands-on doing all the MCC for him. So literally like hand degorging and all of that. And he had contacts in Baden-Verwachten. So he got me there because he felt a little bit concerned that I was only doing this really small harvest, not getting enough experience. So he got me in one of the big wineries. So no, it was a great way of doing it, where I did like 2 or 3 days out of the week with him, and the rest of the week I was in Baden-Verwachten doing the harvest. But like I said to you, it's not as romantic as it sounds. We end up as students, we end up just washing, tanks and topping barrels and early morning sugar tasting and stuff. It's not as romantic as it sounds. Not stomping on grapes or anything.
I was hoping you'd stomped Harry's grapes at one point.
No, sorry, not that exciting. But it was amazing. It was a good experience.
No, Charlene is actually sort of ridiculously modest when it comes to her sort of wine experience. So don't shake your head, Charlene. But she's like a traveling winemaker as well. So has also been over in Argentina doing harvests over there. And what's the difference that you found? Because I mean, we've got well-traveled people here, but I mean, I don't know what and Harry's just brainwashed me into South African wines. But how do you find what we're doing here compared to someone like Argentina?
Well, I mean, it was just particularly where I was very different. It was a very small region. It's not the well-known Mendoza, which is in the middle of the country. It was right at the top in Salta, Cafajate, tiny little wine region, not a huge variety of wines, but known for completely different grapes that I'm even used to, like Torontes, which is a Muscat grape, and obviously Malbec. So, I mean, it was a completely different experience. I absolutely love Argentinian wines and the culture, and I was really, it was very nice to be accepted into it. It's a very hospitable, very similar culture to South Africa, Afrikaans culture at least, very hospitable. But yeah, no, I love the experience. It's if being American, you guys, if you could ever go there, like a really amazing small region, not so well known, Cafajate, I can highly recommend it. Very beautiful.
Cafajate.
And beautiful Cafajate. No.
Cool, Charlene. Tad, I don't know if I think I'm conscious that you guys have got work to do, and I've got a bottle of wine to finish.
There's no chance of work anymore, Ingram. It's all over. No.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
But has anyone got any questions for any of the guides? I mean, it's such a treat to have them here, and you guys obviously, trust them with your clients, and hopefully you've got a little taste of where they're all from and what they do and what they know. But if you want to know any little secret wines, which war Harry fought in, anything, I mean, just take your microphones off now and pop a question through.
Karen, great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us today. Any other questions, guys, just send us an email. We're going to have a third version of this to come in the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that.
No, Tad, thank you so much for organizing. It's kind of good to connect with our friends in South Africa and all over the world. Chris was like a late ad. I'm like, Chris, you got to get on this. I really appreciate organizing this, Tad. It's well worth it.
100%. Yeah, thanks for being there, Mark. Yeah, thanks for making sure that Moriarty showed up from the wilds of Montana in his climbing helmet. Late.
I mean, if you do have a glass or a
Yeah,
jar, as Chris has, let's raise it and then cheers the person next to you on the screen.
We all got the same
I'll take a
person
picture. Hold on.
glass.
We can cheers anyone. Just don't pour
That's
wine on
fun.
their head.
I don't know which side to go.
You don't have a side. Hold on. Hold it up so I can take a picture.
I don't know which side to go. I've got a phone.
Yeah.
Ingram, cheers yourself, and let me get a proper screenshot.
Okay. A screenshot. You guys are so technical over there on the other side of the pond.
Right? All right, ready? Everybody ready? Scotty, show us your tea.
Look at Scotty's tea. Scott, you have stolen that from a hotel. That is not your sort of standard order. I'm going to buy that from the shops kind of cup.
This is from the Alton Boutique Hotel, actually.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. I'm sure you. I'd like to know your linen count at home.
All
right,
good,
guys.
I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Thanks for staying up late on that side, guys.
Listen.
No, it's fun.
Nice to meet you guys.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, guys.
I'll just say, guiding team, we might as well have a lion tomorrow.
Yeah, we've got so much to do.
Yeah.